We are going to wait just a few more minutes until the proper representatives join in. We do have Lloyd Duhon in here. He's part of the Budget Committee of Intersect. Hi, Lloyd. We are also waiting for Lawrence Clark from Intersect, who's also part of the Budget Committee. And I am going to wait for my colleague Jack. He's going to help me, excuse me, moderate this session. Seems Lawrence is already here. Hi, Laws. How are you?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. All right. So the recording has already started on behalf of Lloyd's note taker. So we are live. All righty. Lloyd, Laws, we have a few more people joining.
I just want to just give it a couple of minutes to let everyone join in, and then we'll kind of start off the AMA session.
Perfect. We already have 47 people, and more are joining.
Excellent.
I think we had 80 that had signed up, so that is fantastic.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone got the update for the Zoom link. By the way, everyone, this change occurred because Google Meet tends to have several bugs when there are multiple people in call. So we had to quickly pivot to Zoom, a completely open Zoom call, to handle more members watching and to have a great recording session, a great chat representation, so no one was ignored during the session.
Fifty-one people. Cool. Okay, so shall we get started then, Lloyd? You happy?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, so look, thank you for everyone for joining. Obviously, we've set these sessions up following our Dubai presentation. So in Dubai, Lloyd and I gave a quick masterclass and overview of the budget processes where the Budget Committee within Intersect was at the time. And we set these up as a number of drop-in AMA-style sessions to openly discuss, review, and answer any questions that anybody had relating to the budget process. So a quick bit of an overview as an intro, I'm sure, and then I'll pass to Lloyd. And I know Lloyd's got some additional bits to add, but a quick overview. So Intersect is a company that administers a fund, which is called the Cardano Development Foundation. That's what it's called today, and it's soon to change. So there's a separate entity. So there's two entities at play here. One is Intersect, and one is the CDF. CDF is the area or the fund that holds the money, and Intersect is the administration arm for said fund. So we administer and provide the support and facilitation for that area. So the Budget Committee presented a number of items which we'll run through today, just to give you a quick overview, and around how we as the Budget Committee has collated the requests from each committee. And how, obviously, this is step number one in our socialization. So we'll talk about our roadmap here as well, just to make sure everybody is aware of the steps that we're taking to socialize the lower level detail. And then we'll talk about I'm sure about some of the withdrawals and other elements relating to the ADA and the management of ADA on behalf of the approved DReps and the committees. All right, Lloyd, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Thank you, Lawrence. And yeah, the important, to me, one of the most important things Lawrence just said is that we're just getting started. I think that there's one of the bigger confusions out there that I've seen is that as though we've made a whole bunch of decisions and the budget is set in stone kind of thing, and we're just trying to pass it through. No. That is not what's going on here. This is the beginning of the socialization process. The committees, the various committees within Intersect are the ones that are collating budgets around their remits. We needed to start somewhere. So for 2025, that was where we started. We started making the different committees having access to the community and the things that needed to be done. And it's things like keeping the lights on. We're talking about core development. We're talking about research. We're talking about things like meetups and gatherings. We're talking about things like Project Catalyst. All of the things that we've already done in the past, we're trying to move forward, doing those things in 2025, adding on that we're approving the budget with DReps to do that work, so that as we go year by year, we can add additional things to Cardano's process. So that's the idea here, is that we're taking these first baby steps by doing the things we're already doing in Cardano and but adding on. It's just like when we changed from the 7 keys that were owned by the 3 entities to, the 7 constitutional committee members. This is our. I'm not sure if we can, Laura, who's leaking through there. If you guys don't mind.
Please continue on, Lloyd. I have just muted them.
Got it. Thank you. So just like we did, by replacing the 7 Genesis keys with the 7 members of the ICC. This is one of those other steps that we have to take as a community. We have to now define a budget. We have to take that budget and then execute on it. And so we're looking at methods to execute on that budget that does everything that needs to be done, including things like legal compliance and having contracts with vendors and all of those other things that are required. So a lot of what you'll see from what we're doing is an attempt to map what was already happening in Cardano through the founding entities into the process that is now Cardano's governance process. So, I think that's a great place to start from. And I'd like to know, we're open to questions and suggestions. That's what we're here for today. This is an Ask Me Anything session. So if you're going to ask me what my favorite toppings on pizza are, I'll tell you. Some of you won't like it, but I'll tell you. But if you have other things that are more related to the budget, we obviously want to take those questions first. So
can't leave us hanging on that, Lloyd. You must tell us now. What is your favorite pizza topping?
I am a pineapple pizza guy. I do, in fact, like Hawaiian pizza. So with jalapeno.
Hawaiian is the best. I agree with you.
So,
all right,
who would like to go first?
Yeah.
We have one question in the chat. Is CDF Dev Trust?
Yes, it is. So the CDF, or the Cardano Development Foundation, is nicknamed the Dev Trust. It's a nickname that was given. We gave it back in the 8th of December to separate it from the Cardano Foundation. It is something we're discussing, obviously, to change. It is the Cardano Foundation, CF, have asked us to remove it because of the duplications, the similarities with their name. So we're just on the process now of actually changing that. So as soon as we have done that, we will announce it. So herein, if anyone says Dev Trust or CDF, it is the other entity, not Intersect.
Yeah, and someone had asked if that was CardanoDevelopment.com, and no, that is not the same thing. Thank you, Chris, for clearing that up in the chat as well. That's another great point. Chris is here. He's part of the budget committee as well. So glad to have you here, Chris. Let me see. I'm just getting a quick look. I see Rafael Fraga is here. He is an observer for the budget committee. Trying to, as I'm digging through all the lovely faces, all the familiar faces I see here. See if we have any other members. Jose Velasquez is here. He is an elected member of the budget committee.
Well, Lloyd, if we haven't got any questions, we have 2 choices. We know there's some topics following the weekend Zoom activity. So maybe, if anyone would like to raise them, happy to talk about anything else. But maybe we kind of start with those.
Hi.
We can get going.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, John, go ahead.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Thanks, Lloyd. It's good to see you again. Just one question that can be addressed now, or you can save it for later. But does the Budget Committee have a response to people who are looking at the headline figures of the ADA withdrawal of 300 to 500 million and are just saying, without any evidence or reference to anything, that is too much on some level? And I mean, the implication is perhaps that an approach should have been taken where a figure for the withdrawal could have been set first, and then all of the things that we want to do could have been done up to that limit. Now, that would be a way of addressing this with obviously negative side effects. But, does the Budget Committee have a response to suggestions that the entire process should be done in that different manner?
Sure, John. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And so let's start with where the number came from. 300 to 500 million ADA. That number came from treasurers who work within the Cardano community, who do this kind of work for a living, and that is the amount that is in the safe zone to spend from the Treasury. So that's why that number is placed. And so there's value to putting that number out, saying this is what can be safely, reasonably used from the Treasury, and there's some rationale behind it. So there's value to it going that route. But you're right. Another route could be that you set an arbitrary limit. But I'm personally not a fan of an arbitrary limit. I think that the idea of what's the safe range, and then what would we like to do? So in other words, what development resources are available, what ideas are on the table, and what are the costs of those things, which is what we're assigning now. We are getting, not us in budget, but these other committees are doing. They're putting that together and saying, well, we have these resources, we have these things that need to be done or we want to do. And so DReps, from this bucket of things, shall we move forward? And for us in budget, it's collating that data, putting it all in one place in a meaningful way so that the DReps can look at it and go, oh, okay, these things are reasonable. And they can say, well, this thing's not reasonable. I don't want this thing. Okay. Then we go back to the committee and say, well, this is something that DReps are saying is unreasonable and they don't want it. How do you want to proceed? And we only act as that back and forth.
Yeah. Oh, we've got their mic open. Sorry, just to add on to that as well, Lloyd, I think. So it's a big number. Obviously, we've put a range because we haven't formulated the total withdrawal amount. Now, because we've got to work with the CC and DReps to agree as part of the constitutional process the total amount for the year, and then agree out of that proportion what is going to be enabled to be put towards a budget for the Cardano. So in a sense, we have actually followed that process. We're working to figure out what the number is going to be, whilst at the same time, we're working through the lower level details with the committees. So there is a separation from the two, because we haven't confirmed yet to any of the committees that the funds are available, because number one is that the budget hasn't been agreed by the DReps, and the lower level scope for each of the committees also hasn't been reviewed and yet agreed by the DReps. So those two items are needed over the following November and December period before we can confirm anything. But the purpose of November is all about the socialization, is all about passing over that information. So I hope that answers your question, John.
Awesome. And Jose, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yes, I believe it does answer the question. And I think, some sort of summary of the answer that's just been given by the both of you and some details on what that process is could do a lot of heavy lifting for the communication of what the process is. Just that little bit of how we came up with this number and what we're doing. Is really an important thing to get out there.
Noted.
Simply and accurately. And the way you've done it here, perfect for me. But it does need to be able to be spread on socials, etc. Anyway, great work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate
it. If you guys don't mind, for the next question we've had, I'm sure it's bugging everyone's minds. Johnny Callie asked from the chat, can the actual costs for keeping the lights on in previous years be published to provide much needed context as to what the budgeting target should be for year one of the DREP ratified budget?
So previous years is tricky. So we only have 1 year with Intersect and the CBF. So we only have 1 year to go on. That's what we're basing our view on for next year at the moment is what costs were for this year. And yes, so hopefully as we go through the lower level details, you'll see the value from each of the committees. But we've got to agree, I think, and going back to the previous one, we need to ensure that the DReps agree a number, and then we can work with the committees on the deliverables for the year. So
that's the net change limit, right? That's that idea of the net change limit number, which is, but again, this is the process the Constitution calls out, right? So the net change limit. It has to be determined first, and that is the number that DReps are saying is safe to spend. So we have to get that number.
Thank you for seeing Johnny's follow-up.
Do you want me to chip in on that just for a second? I think, maybe just John has given a follow-up question around, pre-Intersect numbers. I think it's worthwhile, kind of couching, companies and organizations' objectives change, particularly over the last sort of 2 years. There's been quite a bit of a seismic shift within some of the organizations, whether you're growing team numbers, because your businesses have grown, or for example, in the scope of IO, I don't think it's any surprise that the headcount of IO has reduced quite a bit over the last couple of years, right? So it's very difficult to pick out like for like years and numbers. I mean, we do have Catalyst as a bit of a baseline for what was spent last year towards sort of community innovation funding. And, we gave a pretty good account, I think, of our operating costs as the Catalyst team. And that's all considered and factored into this 300 to 500 range. Necessarily, I think it's not just maybe to kind of couch another point, to kind of head it off at the tail. Catalyst isn't going to be the only way in which community organizations receive funding this time round. Necessarily, that's the point of why we're going through this budgeting process. But Catalyst is, a feature of it. So, the sorts of numbers that we delivered last year, 150 million's worth of ADA through the Catalyst pipes, plus then the fund operator costs, and they're different for this time round. They're less necessarily because there are a lot more slices of the pie to carve up, and other verticals and objectives that need to be hit. So I think just to sort of round that off, the numbers that we can draw reference from are, as Lawrence stated, a year's worth of operating costs for Intersect, the objectives there. We've got some reference points from Catalyst, but to look at, any individual company's actual spend on headcount or costs, I don't think, is necessarily absolutely needed at this point. I don't think, private companies turning over headcount details is that appropriate either, but that's more of a personal opinion, more than anything.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Now, I believe we can move over to the raised hands. We have quite a few now. We have 8 people.
Yeah.
First one in line is Phil Lewis. Phil, please go ahead and answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that there was a desire to circulate a number just to get the conversation going. But I think one of the challenges I'm seeing online is the fact that people are struggling to come to terms with it without more detail. So I guess the detail is going to be important. And do we have a published timeline, albeit we know that things can change and we might not be exactly that timeline, but a kind of a target timeline. Do we have something published that goes, this is when different pieces of information are going to drop?
Yes.
We do, yes. And that's the November. So it's this month. So this is our first meeting. And then we have 4 of these planned, I think, at the moment, and more being planned. During these November the committees will be coming to here, talking openly to the community about the things that they would like to deliver in 2025 and having the initial review. And that will help, hopefully, people understand the volume of work and potential associated costs that may be apportioned to that value.
I was actually thinking more along, okay, once we've done this stage, there's obviously another stage which is publishing a detailed budget, and then there's another stage which is putting an info action in, and then there's another stage. So all of these stages, is that timeline actually mapped out and published somewhere?
It is. It's in the budget committee's knowledge base. We did go over that timeline in Dubai, and there's a slide in the deck that shows the timeline going into 2025, and even how we're going to build the 2026 budget in 2025 as well, like that. So we've run obviously It's subject to Chain Plus One. It's subject to whether or not the DReps approve the Constitution. Like there's a dozen caveats I can throw in there. But yes, we have our fingers crossed. This is the timeline. If we all continue skipping down the yellow brick road, this is what it looks like.
So I think we are talking about the very short, detailed timeline of when do we get the detailed breakdown of the proposal. We're not talking about long-term timeline. Like when can we get the actual detailed proposal? That's all Phil was asking.
No, I was asking for a long-term timeline as well. So I think, do we have an infographic that we could just get out on Twitter? I think if the Intersect account just posted an infographic, I think that would go a long way to helping get it in people's minds as to exactly how this is all working.
Yep. Phil, I actually just started publishing the social calendar for the next 30 days with our team. That infographic is in there along with, dozens of other super important concepts that we're trying to communicate. So yes, we started, you may have seen it. We started yesterday with a list of 15. It was a 15-part thread that tried to take over the weekend, the best we could see from the misconceptions and kind of answer each one by one. We put that out yesterday. So far, there were even a couple more questions from it, which is great. We keep talking through the questions and try to further refine the information that people need to see so they understand it. And so that work is ongoing, but yes, absolutely. The timeline, it's in a graphic format already, so pushing that out as an infographic is going to be relatively easy at this point.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I am going to ask everybody, please wait the turn. We will continue to go through everyone's hands, so please continue to have patience with us as we go through everybody's questions. I know there's a lot, and we will continue to do it. Laura, if it's okay, we can move to Patrick's question.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Patrick.
All right. Hey, Patrick.
Thank you. So my question is basically around, why we're funneling everything through Intersect? Because from my understanding, the way governance fundamentally in Cardano works is we have this big pile of money, right, which is the Treasury. And then there's entities that can apply for a larger chunk of money from this big pile of money, which one of these entities is Intersect, right? But there could be many entities. There could be 10, there could be 20. It doesn't really matter. And then each one of those entities has specific rules on how they distribute the money further, right? So Intersect has the budget process, obviously, but then there's other entities that also can have different rules, right? Like a centralized way or a completely decentralized voting mechanism and so on. And right now, what's happening is we are putting everything in Intersect, and it feels like, we're taking all of these different entities and we're pushing them all through Intersect, which creates this bottleneck of centralization where we have to vote for the whole budget of Intersect instead of voting for these slightly smaller baskets. And the one example that I have, which really is strange to me, is why is Catalyst in there? Because Catalyst is, in my opinion, basically on the same level as Intersect, because Catalyst has very clear rules about how they distribute the money. So Catalyst could just go ahead and ask for 150 million for 3 more Catalyst funds, right? And then they have the decentralized voting mechanism and all that stuff that we already know, which is their rules, their budget process, basically, for distributing it. And at the moment, Catalyst is also in the budget, for Intersect. It all doesn't make sense. Why is everything in one entity? It feels very centralized. It feels very controlling. It feels there's still IOG and all this weirdness that we're used to in there to have their hand on it, instead of just having all the different smaller, maybe 50 million, 100 million, whatever, withdrawals for different entities.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. So Article 3, Section 7 and Section 8, Constitution, is why you have a offline, off-chain, and on-chain annual budget process. That is why we have a unified budget. It is possible we could go the Polkadot route. We could change the Constitution. We could go the Polkadot route, and we could have a sort of free-for-all open thing where everybody puts in their own requests, and the DReps have to go through and review every request on their own and decide whether or not they're going to do it. Or we can do a unified annual budget where we have a conversation about the budget. The DReps still ultimately decide what goes in that budget. We make a agreement that we come together on that these are going to be the elements in the budget. And then the entities that, as you said, have their own rules for how they spend the money will be there. They'll be a part of the conversation. They'd be a part of the process, and that would be executed on. And then next year, the DReps would look and they would say, oh, well, this group did what they said they were going to do, and this other group did not do what they said they do. So we're not going to give more money to the group that didn't do what they said they're going to do, and we're going to continue to fund the groups that did what they said they were going to do. Part of our goal in Intersect in the budget committee is to actually have more entities come forward to support buckets of funds. We only facilitate the process. This is not Intersect's budget. This is a budget for the Cardano community that we can all understand. If we don't have a budget process where we can all understand it, then you can have absolute chaos where anybody could put something forward and we can't have how do we enforce the net spending limit that is a feature of our Constitution if we don't have a budget to live within for the year?
By voting. That's how we do it.
Maybe just to add to that as well, like why is Catalyst here? There's a real big value in doing this together rather than individually. And Patrick, when you say it feels centralized, there's so many community members from all different parts of the world that are participating and collaborating to make this happen. So if it's just the umbrella term Intersect as an organization, and that's what feels centralized, when you unwrap that onion, you see that there's multiple committees with multiple stakeholders representative of like the entire community, the small guys, individuals, right up to founding entities and all and sundry in between. So, to sort of come back to why Catalyst is part of this, it's because I want to collaborate and I want to see that there's a budget that's sensible that goes over the line so that we can get a fund for Catalyst running in the early part of next year. My worry is if we don't have structure around it, particularly on this first swing of the bat, that nothing gets voted on or approved. And we've got a process now, I think, that's well defined, that's got a lot of people that have had a chance to look at it from all parts of the community. And I think we've got a path forward. So that's why we're here. We're here supporting everybody that's working on this initiative.
Should I say something? Maybe. Okay. Sorry
Please.
For everyone who keeps waiting. So I think obviously there's like many different opinions around this, but I think this is like fundamentally way more centralized right now because there's one proposal basically coming from Intersect, and we have to say yes to that proposal and all the stuff that's in there. Or no, and this proposal was decided by the budget committee, and then also obviously the board of Intersect.
It's not been decided by the budget committee at all.
That's right. It's simply not it. Yeah.
Okay,
sorry, Lloyd.
Can you guys let Patrick finish? He's speaking for a lot of us, actually.
Then, if it's not decided by the budget committee, then we need a little bit more clarity about who is actually deciding and not only who's technically deciding, but also who has the power to decide in like the hierarchy of Intersect at the end. And also, I think in the end, what this means is that we can't do anything with the budget without Intersect because we need to have, because it's written in the Constitution, which is horrible in my opinion. And that's what I'm reading from it, Lloyd, right now. And
that's fine, Patrick.
And for Catalyst, it would be such a good use case because Catalyst is so decentralized right now, but now it's going through this like bottleneck of Intersect instead of just doing a proposal to the Treasury for 150 million for 3 more funds, and that's it. It could even happen before Intersect. It's like such an easy, example of the governance system that we have. So I don't know. I don't really like this approach, but yeah.
Well, thank you, Patrick.
From what I'm hearing so far.
And I just want to address a couple of misconceptions that I'm hearing there so that it is cleared up. So first of all, Intersect does not, in the Budget Committee specifically, does not make these decisions. The various committees are bringing forth budget proposals, which is a completely normal process anytime you're doing an annual budget for anything. And we're talking about a multi-million-dollar annual budget process that has to take into account stakeholders from all over the globe. Okay, so that is actually what we're dealing with here, and not a single entity's budget. In order to do that, you have to have a process of some form. You have to have a means for all of these items to come forward. The idea of having it so open that all that happens is you have dozens of proposals, you end up with a polka dot-like situation. I've seen what happened. I've watched very closely. We had the benefit of, while we were building this process, to watch what happened in Polkadot and watch them blast through their treasury. If we want that approach, the DReps can vote for that approach. That's what it would be. They'd have to vote for that approach. There's a lot of folks that don't want that approach that I've spoken to. So that this is what happens if you go to an open format like that. There is no accountability. There is no, and again, that's the other side of it. How do you audit an account, which is in Section 8? So the Constitution does not say Intersect has to. Intersect is stepping up to do this process and provide a process, provide a means. If someone else has stepped up, I would love to collaborate with them. I'm looking for them. I've asked for it. If anyone else is out there writing any sort of budget process, please step forward. I want to see your budget process. I want to work with you on your budget process. That would be ideal, because we have to do this. The Constitution told us we have to have a budget process. So we started writing one. That does not mean we're the only game in town. And in fact, in our process, we've always accommodated for the DReps, and that we would, Intersect committees would spend so much, they would come up with whatever their numbers were. The DReps would approve it, and then whatever's left above that in the net change limit would be up to the DReps and the CC how they wanted to spend it and how they wanted to accommodate it. That's in the process. We've talked about it that way from the beginning. So just to clear up some of those misconceptions, so some of the things you're asking for is what we're doing. We're trying to be a place where people can come and provide their budget requests so that they can fit into the Constitution, so that they can utilize the distributed and decentralized nature of the Intersect committees to get their budget items through. And that's an important part of the process, and we hope that it's going to be useful to the community as a whole over time. So that's where we are standing right now on that. All right.
Okay. Move on to the next one.
Yes, we seem to have a few hands raised before we actually move to the chat, because I'm trying to go by first come, first serve. Sorry, everyone. Florian, you're next.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, Lloyd, I have well understood what you mentioned. It's all about the process. But between what you are offering or proposing now and the Polkadot way, I think there is a middle ground. For me, something that is, let's say, unacceptable in the way your process is designed is that normally when you decide a budget, first you decide the strategy. What do we want to achieve? Where do we want to spend the money? First, there is no detailed breakdown of the budget, like line by line, really 100,000 by 100,000. Where do we spend? Secondly, there is no transparency about who created that, who will, what are the kind of assumptions that these people are making. And then, in a normal, let's say, corporation, when you go through this budget process at a kind of multinational level, you always have the strategy. Then you know how much you will spend, okay? And then you really allocate all these tasks, and then you have reporting, you have monitoring, you track the delay, you track the overspending. All this governance on the budget committee is also not well explained and understood. And also when you contract with company, for example, for outsourcing, you also need to monitor them, to control them. So for me, all of that is currently, let's say, not really taken through. So I understand it's all about the process, but before doing any vote, we should be sure to have all the right processes in place. And we should first vote about the governance, the organization, etc. And then we agree on the strategy and the money to be spent.
Thank you, Florian. And actually, just so that I can share with you, we had a Florida process workshop it was nearly a week long, where we went through in detail a lot of those things you're talking about, where we started diagramming and working through those processes to try and be able to publish them to the community. And yes, some are already published. That we did some at Dubai. We're continuing to finish those up and get those published to the community again, so that you can see every step of the process from start to finish, because yes, you have to take into account everything that you just mentioned there. Now, the number, we came up with that. We asked treasurers. We came up with that 300 to 500 as that safe range. Currently, the committees are putting those details together. These are the things that we would do to build that. And as far as the direction goes, that was the 5 buckets for this year. And we made sure that we talked about the fact that in 2025, we want to have that bucket allocation process, that direction, that roadmap idea in public. And you can see that the product committee has been doing some work toward that, where they've been having open sessions where they're trying to align what the roadmap needs to look like going forward. Kyle's here and he's up there. He's actually elected to that committee. I know that work is ongoing. So Lawrence uses the car analogy. I use the boat analogy. We've set sail. We're going in the water here, but we're changing the sails. We're changing the motors. We're having to do those things because we have to keep the lights on in 2025. We have to find a way through this process. And so we've taken what we've built so far. We're sharing it with the community. We're trying to socialize everything that we have so we can answer your questions, so we can show you that your concerns are valid and that we have solutions designed for those concerns, because we've also thought about them and we also want to protect the community in those same ways that you're just talking about there.
Another thing that for me, if I may, just to finish, you mentioned you have asked treasurer that have give you a number for the 5 buckets. One thing that have been missing in Cardano until now is any audit report, any transparency. So how can we, let's say, control and double check these numbers? So it's just, there is, until now, there were never any transparency or any audit report of the founding entities. So this is a big black box in Cardano, and I think it is also not the future of what Intersect or Catalyst should be. So I want to have also, transparency. I want to know who are these treasurers, where does this number come from? And when they say it's 5 buckets, why it's not 6 buckets? One thing also I want to say is until now, all the builders were not represented at all in any of this, let's say, organization. A blockchain is only as strong as the best applications that are living on this blockchain, because through the apps, the user pays the transaction fee that is financing the treasury. So it's a question of how you include the process, how to, engage with them. And basically regarding this process, big thing that is missing is really the breakdown of this by this treasurer and also transparency on the numbers.
If I can take that one, so just to answer that, hopefully kind of step into that one. So we have a product committee which is up and running, which has defined the strategy and vision. And I think at Dubai we listed out the committee's high-level views of what they'd like to do for 2025, which concluded with a vision and strategy for 2025 from the product committee. So the committees and the members associated in those committees are building that strategy. So as we move into next year, we do have the product. They will give us our 1-year, 2-year and 5-year strategy for the Cardano, which will be approved by the members and ultimately the community. And then as that strategy is built out, the appropriate committees will be aligning to that strategy. So the technical steering committee, etc., and working with the product committee and the DReps to gain all of that level of detail approved. So we are at the point this year of starting that information up. So answer the questions around transparency. Absolutely. Intersect as an entity is a not-for-profit corporate. So we're set up deliberately in that fashion, and we've stated that through our finances, we will be transparent in what we do. So at the end of this year, we plan to present our filings for Intersect and the CDF. So the CDF is a Cayman's entity, but we've always said that these financials will be available to all to see, and ultimately to the DReps as well, who are ultimately, when we come into next year, our plan is to, set up quarterly meetings with all the DReps because they're approving any funding and they're approving the work, and they will be able to see the detail of where the money has been spent. So that is the purpose behind Intersect.
Thank you. But regarding your strategy, so, it's so important to share this vision, what you want to achieve or what some people think Cardano can achieve in 3 years from now, because my question until now, really no funding entities have really ever engaged directly for the strategy with the builders to also understand their needs, what they want to do. Or, for example, just make an example. For example, Anastasia Labs with their roll-up Midgard. If most of the community, for example, think we really need scalability solution and they should receive money from Intersect directly to accelerate this development, is it included already in this strategy committee? How we can influence that? And for me, it's also, as a builder, as someone that is working in this ecosystem during the last 4 years, it has the biggest importance to know, okay, what are we building? And I would also, let's say, need and almost request to have clarity on the strategy and who decides, if I want to engage with this person, who are they? Because again, until now, it has been a big, giant black box.
So what I'll do is I'll take an action to send you the details for the budget committee, because I know they've had a number of open sessions to bring in builders. I know they've engaged many people. So it's not, just the Intersect members. They've gone out to the wider community to build out that. So we can publish, to this group of attendees, the details for the products committee, and then you absolutely get involved with them and they will help guide you to define the strategy.
Lawrence, just like to really hammer home this point. There are working groups for every single one of the committees, and everybody can get involved, right? It's actually really, be really great if we could have multiple working groups within, like a sort of subgroup groups within working groups, because there are so many people that want to participate. Florian, I totally hear what you're saying, and actually it's about signal to noise ratio, right? We need to be able to understand where we go to contribute opinion and input that helps to develop strategy and plans. So what I'm taking from this is that it needs to be really easy to find that information on how to get involved. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would like to agree. And also, I would like to participate in all this workshop, but also it's always a time question. But Lloyd, to your question, if you want someone that reviews some of the budget, I'm happy to do it. I have also some ideas. That was one of my previous job actually, to audit banks, to work in the best practice of governance. So that's why also I published the other day a list of processes that I would like to see. So, and regarding Lawrence, for your question about the strategy, there are many builders outside. For example, here in this call, we had Marcel, the founder of Eternal, and others. And I think you need to have a way to contact with these people, get the feedback, and also include them in the strategy. This is just what I'm asking.
Thank you, Florian. Just very quickly on that. So one of the remits that we have in our committee is that when a builder or anyone comes in that they're looking for where to go to get answers, we are acting right now as traffic cops. We're trying to help them find, well, that goes over to product, or that goes over to TSC or open source, because depending on who the builder is and what they're doing, one of those three committees will likely have an avenue for them to bring their proposal forward. So and this is, again, I feel like a temporary role for budget, because the processes are still being established and grown up. But as they mature, the goal should be that if someone comes in with a great idea, there should be a very easy, wide open, well-lit path go here to get the information that you need and to participate the way you want to. So that's absolutely a goal for us. And again, for now, we're trying to act as traffic cop. We're trying to direct people where they need to go because it is hard to follow. And we're trying to make it easier to follow the best we can as processes get built up.
So
everyone.
I understand, but just one last word. Basically, we all agree that a lot of process has to be designed and put in place, etc. So that's why, for me, if I had to vote tomorrow, I would say it's too early because we don't have all of this process in place, the strategy, and then the voting. And I have the impression we are starting by the end. So that's why I was so skeptical.
That's why we're not voting till January. So
okay.
At the earliest, we're not voting. We won't be voting. We have a lot of work to still do.
Okay.
So thank you, Florian.
Everyone, just before we move on, I would like to clarify a few things. We do have 12 minutes left on the session. For those who don't have the chance to have their questions answered, I would recommend you coming on the next few sessions. And also, please write them down in the chat because we are saving the entire chat and we plan on answering them officially. Another thing is, I'm not crazy. Okay, I see someone giving the thumbs down, but it's reality. The meeting was set for 1 hour, so we can't really leave on that sense. Just continuing, we are, I remember setting the call to be recorded. I know a lot of people here heard recording in progress being said in here. I'm not crazy, but apparently Zoom is not recording. I do know that Lloyd's AI note taker is recording officially. So that's a positive. We are going to have that after the session, but not apparently like video recording. We're just going to have apparently audio if that's not an issue with everyone. In the next few sessions, we're going to make sure we do have video as well. Oh, it says recording. Okay, it doesn't say recording for me. So thank you, everyone. I was just clarifying in case we had any issues. Please continue on forward with Colin.
Collins.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I was wondering if you guys had any proposals or any ideas about automating some of this process so that, for example, making the budget allocation algorithmic based on revenues last 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, setting up algorithms that decide this so that it isn't people making stuff up, and that would reduce the amount of, division, I guess you would call it. So if you make it trust algorithmic and set up processes where people could come in with proposals and set up metrics that are on chain, make more of this stuff algorithmic, if that's an idea that you guys have going forward.
So it's possible. It's not built yet. It is something we've talked about it in civics as well. This idea of like constitutional debt, the idea of building things for the community over time that need to be built. I know that they're built. I know they had a workshop over the weekend in civics where they started building processes that they would take and tackle in 2025. So does that exist today? It doesn't. Could it exist tomorrow? Could there be some level of contracts where things can be more automated or more built on, transaction volume or whatever? It's all possible. There'd have to be research done. We'd have to see what the impacts would be. There are this is why the Constitution does talk about off-chain processes, because there are things that we can't do on-chain today. Doesn't mean that we can't build toward those things on-chain in the future. That's kind of the point of the innovation, of growing as a community toward what our ideal is and trying to get there. And that's actually the hope, is that we are building toward our ideals.
And is that something so you'd go to the civics committee to make proposals and put forth some of those ideas?
100% yes, absolutely. That's the home for those.
Okay.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Henrik?
Yes, let's go to the next person. Kenrick, please go ahead.
Thanks. I appreciate the comment. First of all, I want to say that Patrick's remarks were 100% on the mark. They had clarity and wisdom, and then replying to that there were misconceptions was inappropriate. So I think an apology for that suggestion would be in order, but you can take that up as you want.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah, I understand, Patrick, but the response wasn't okay. Your remarks were fine. And I understand that, on a personal level, you can ride with it, but on a community level, those kind of responses to the community's input is what's not okay.
Henry, let me just say, I apologize if I came across curt. I just wanted to make it very clear the budget committee doesn't make the decisions on what's going into the budget.
We have a very limited time to hear people speak. Can we listen to people asking questions, Chris?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to ask my question. I think with the communication that went out, there were sort of three things. And each one has issues, but they get sort of worse as you go down. The first one was, yes, we understood that a budget was coming out. And there's issues as to whether an annual budget is the best way to do it, but that's in the Constitution. We understood that Intersect was going to be working on a budget. What a lot of people didn't understand and is new is that they're also putting in the same transaction for the DReps to decide on a full year transaction to one organization. That's not okay, and that's what I don't think is justified, but from what I've read, and that's where I think there's bigger issues. And then there was a third layer where there was a suggestion that now that the transaction has been made, that organization would have authorization to use those funds to make decisions on how the budget was going to be made through DRep delegation, stake pool delegation. And there, what I would say is that's the equivalent of if IOG over the past 4 years had been taking withdrawals from the Treasury to run catalysts and then been using those funds to decide what projects get budgeted. So that's where I think that the communication that went out has raised such concerns in the community. So I think that in that budget needs to be a statement that those funds will not be used to influence community decisions. That could be right in the document as an example. But let me get back to the second point, because I think the second point is the one that I think more clarity is needed on is, yes, there are sort of financial decisions that need to be made in order to establish creditworthiness of the community. So that's understandable. But it is not clear that establishing creditworthiness requires a full year lump sum every single year. And then getting to Patrick's point, I think a lot of us thought that the process was going to be more like Intersect would have a budget, and that would almost become like a constitutional requirement. And then others would be proposing against that budget, and the revenue streams would come more directly to other entities. And so, for example, just like you said, the very first thing could have been a transaction to the Catalyst program. And that's the only thing, in terms of keeping the lights on, that's the only program that has been using Treasury funds. So that, in a sense, as far as keeping the lights on, that's the one that's the only program that's been using the Treasury. So those are my questions and remarks.
Understood. Thank you, Kenrick. So I'll go to the first one I'm going to go to, because it's hard to keep all of those together at one time, but I'm going to do my best. The first thing is that the budget is going to multiple companies. It's not going to Intersect. Intersect would be handling the contracts. The CDF is where the funds would reside as a holding company that holds the funds for the annual budget, which is a perfectly normal part of a process. And the voting thing, I actually should let Nico, because it was Nico's post. It wasn't a budget committee post. It wasn't an official post. It was Nico's wonderful, thank you, attempt at his own take of how it went. And the entire weekend was misconceptions that were taken from Nico's post without the full context of what we're doing and what we're on offering. And this is what you've done, is repeat those misconceptions that we are trying to put. And yes, Kendrick, saying that something is a misconception means that you don't have all the information in front of you, because you're giving me an answer back that tells me you don't have all the information in front of you. And I'm trying to offer you.
Why don't we have the information?
Jenny, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what today is.
I don't think you have the right to interrupt us, and I want to interrupt you. There's no misconception just because you're not providing enough information. There's not enough transparency. That's why.
Thank you, Tom.
So stop saying that,
It's called information void.
And
it's gaslighting to call it misconception. It really is.
So if I can jump in there. So just to answer that on the voting. From a voting, yes, the ADA will be taken from the Treasury and then placed in the CDF, which is the holding company for it, and then Intersect's the administrator. Now, we have said as Intersect that any ADA received from the Treasury would not be used for voting. We are a members-based organisation, and the members could ask us to use it should they need to. Now, we've always said that we've not planned to do that, and I look forward to any member asking me to do that, because that would encourage a debate. And it's not our ADA as Intersect, to be clear. This is the CC and DReps. We are holding it for the betterment of the community. So any decision that the members make, I would envisage having to go back to the CC and DReps and seeking their advice and guidance on it. But Intersect's standing position is not to use this ADA for voting, just to clear that up. So we wouldn't do that. As far as, no worries. And also from just to add, I think you mentioned as well about the staking. Now, I absolutely agree. There is a staking strategy that we need to figure out and understand and work with the CC and DReps, because they're the ones that are approving any funds that go into it. So we have to create one. And I know the likes of the CF have a staking strategy, and actually speaking to Peter, who's the Treasury for the CF, and Dan, who's the IOG, we're looking at, and Amar from the Emergo, we're utilising their information to create strategy, which again can go to the CC and DReps, because they're the ones approving it. It's your ADA, in the sense you're agreeing us to oversee and facilitate it for you. So we would like to use it for staking, if agreed. If the answer, by the way, from the CC and DReps upon receiving it is we do not wish you to stake it, then we would have to facilitate and support that decision. Mm-hmm. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, the third set. And then I think the bigger question, though, and the hard one, is the justification for the budget to also have a transaction for the whole year. Now, there's been a lot of conversation around that. The way I frame it is that you need reliable cash flows. And because of the mechanics of the Treasury, there's limitations that have, keeping it in the Treasury. So I get that piece of it. But there seems to me that there's still more nuance that is needed, I guess is the best way to say it, in terms of whether it has to be one transaction at the beginning of the year, whether it has to be a transaction that exactly matches the budget. I think those questions are not being addressed clearly enough. And I understand the arguments on both sides, but I don't think there's clarity on that.
Agreed. So it is still work in progress. So we've obviously proposed one transaction for the year, which is a number, because we believe it's to be simpler and easier for us, and it enables us to take some Treasury money, put it into the CDF, and then manage the appropriate suppliers. So as Intersect, we'll be administrating the CDF and having to sign contracts for 12 months for an element of works to be delivered. So we're keen to make sure that we have the funds available at the point of signing a contract, so we can then legally deliver that contract. So that's one of the reasons. Now, what we have talked about, and I think in Dubai we mentioned this, is the potential for multiple Treasury withdrawals. So again, yes, that could be done. Now, I always use the term a financial whip or work in progress. So one thing we're working on, and over the next month into December, we'll be preparing this for everyone to read and review is on a monthly basis, we'll have what's called the WIP, financial WIP, showing the rough amount of money, be it ADA, fiat, and fiat, that's being spent on a monthly basis. So from this year's data and projected into next year. And that can kind of help us. Do we go with a monthly? Do we go with a yearly? Do we go with the quarterly? Now, all of those are yet to be agreed and understood, but we can't do that without engagement from the DReps. So we need the engagement from the DReps and the Constitutional Committee individuals to review our data and agree what they feel comfortable with and how we as Intersect facilitate that data on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So leave that with me. I've noted that action. We're producing the data, and hopefully over the next month into December, we'll give you a view of what we believe 2025 looks like financially, and then that will hopefully help us work through and decide whether it's one or multiple transactions.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Nicholas?
So, Nico, why didn't you wait until Monday so I had a weekend off?
Yes, thank you for the weekend working, by the way, so thank you.
Now, I'm glad we have this conversation now going about the budget. I think it's very important, and I also really want to acknowledge everyone that worked on it so far, right? It's a difficult thing, and I would really ask everyone that criticizes harshly. I mean, criticizing is fine, but if you know, there are humans on the other side, right? And if you throw accusations at their head, I mean, that's just not cool, really. I mean, let's talk civilized, let's discuss it, and I just wanted to say that because, right, I disagree with some things, but we need to have a civilized conversation. And there are three things, you know, when it comes to this whole conversation that I think would really help everyone understand the concept and understand the process better, right? We need to understand, first of all, what are the different items of the budget, right? What are the line items, as you said, Lawrence, right? How much ADA is requested for what, right? And then the second thing what we need to understand is why are these things requested, right? There we come back to the strategy that Florian mentioned. Why do we have X in and not Y? Or why do we prioritize, I don't know, a grant fund like this versus another one, right? And then I think what we also really need is have an understanding of the governance of this budget process, right? Because I see right now that, right, every committee, they prepare their request, and then in the end, if everything goes through as it's right now proposed, potentially, is that the committees then have a separate budget that then they need to work with, right? Let's say the product committee has, I don't know, 100 million ADA, and then they need to govern this 100 million ADA with oversight from the budget committee, with oversight from the community and Intersect members. But ultimately, it's up to the committee members to make the decision. What happens if members of the committees have a vested interest, right? Because there are many committees where you also have suppliers that could directly receive some of that funding, right? And I think this is one thing where I'm most concerned about is that the committees then govern a budget, but they themselves are the recipients of that budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we've talked about at length from a governance and committee governance. So what we've done under the Wyoming element and entity, we've implemented the conflict of interest policy across many of our committees. So upon joining, we ask everyone to declare their conflicts, and biases, so we understand that. The voting members, I know they're going through the onboarding at the moment, especially the ones that I'm taking through at the moment, things like the budget and the ISCM board, is declare your conflicts, let us know what your biases are, and we'll note that down. And when it comes to a decision, I do look at the secretaries of these meetings just to make sure that the appropriate people are aware that, let's say, if I'm in the board, for example, and there's a budget request or a financial request going through relating to IOG, I would ask the IOG representative to basically abstain from the decision on the basis that it's a fundamental impact. So we do look to our committees to implement that type of a process throughout them. Now, obviously, we've got to make sure we're quorum, and we need to ensure that everyone is being transparent as they come through on the committees. And assuming everybody is, I would hope that the appropriate decisions are made. And I think as well, to add on to that, it's as part of our transparency, if a decision is made to spend some money within a committee, I'd expect that report to be visible to the community and the DReps who ultimately approved the spend. And obviously on a quarterly basis, we're proposing to have a more detailed review from each committee, what they've spent, why they've spent it. And if there is an item that the DReps has said no to, for whatever reason, Intersect's job is to facilitate that no and ensure it's not done. Now, and there's obviously then the budget committee's responsibility was to facilitate and give the opportunity for that no to be turned into a yes at an appropriate time through an appropriate decision. So yes, hopefully conflict of interest and more engagement and and lower levels of transparency through the committees, I would hope, will see us through next year.
Randolph.
Hi, I am an SPO, and I've been watching this whole conversation and what is happening inside of Cardano, the governance, and it's a lot input. And I'm not the person to speak on the budgets, how much allocation is needed, who is going to be receiving it, because I don't have the competency to judge if it's a good budget or if it's not a good budget. But what I am mostly concerned on is if we approve something, there should have to be accountability. And I would love to encourage whoever is receiving the budget to redistribute it, to be obligated to an audit, and not an internal audit, but an external audit, so that after the year has passed, we can judge what was good, what was bad. We can't plan something efficiently in the future, because some things are unexpected and has to be changed. There will be decisions made that will look false in a retrospect, and they are looking very good right now. So that is one first question. Is Intersect going to oblige itself to an external audit? And the second question would be about the lump sum, because I have no idea how it is managed. This whole 500 million ADA is a big sum, and I don't know how if it causes market fluctuation. So how this redistribution or taking out of the Treasury will affect the price of ADA. And to add to this question, I would also ask what happens when the budget is set, for example, in dollar terms for 100 million, and the ADA skyrockets to, I don't know, it triples and quadruples. Will Intersect give back the money because we set the budget for 100 million and there are 300 million left? What happens with that? Thank you.
Cool. If I may, so there was three questions. First one, audit. Absolutely, yes. We are looking at kind of a multi-layer audit from a financial perspective, as well as, and we'll take away the technology elements, which each committee will have. But financially, yes, we are looking at an internal audit, so creating an audit working group under the budgets, potentially coming to Intersect members to help review the information financially. So that is the members' view. And then we're also looking at external companies and multiples, which the CC and DReps could select on which companies that you would like us to engage into to perform that audit. So we get a internal review, obviously, from the permanent staff from Intersect doing the financial review. Then there's the second one, which would be the members' review of that, and then the third one being an external. Now, every year, it's only the Intersect accounts that have to go to Wyoming State or the IRS. The Cayman's entity, we don't need to do that. However, it doesn't mean we're not going to do it, to be clear, because we've always said that is the CC and DReps and the communities, and it will be transparent and posted online for all to see. So that's your audit. The second one is the ADA withdrawal. So there has been some analysis done, and I think there's a good article from, I think there's a CTO of the CF online around the impact of making the withdrawals. We've also done some analysis around, for example, the catalyst withdrawals. What is the implications of the ADA price following a catalyst withdrawal. So we are monitoring that and working closely. We believe that it can sustain one withdrawal limit depending on the amount, and it shouldn't impact the price. But inevitably, with any FX transaction of that nature, we've only got the catalyst withdrawals to go on as examples. But it is something that the Treasury individuals I mentioned earlier are looking at, and we will be debating whether it's one or many. And I think that kind of comes back to circles round to us producing the data to show you the understanding and gain approvals from the CC and DReps, ultimately the DReps, as to whether we should or should not go through with one or multiples. And then your third point, the ADA fluctuation, absolutely. So we are again looking at that. So I mentioned earlier what I call my financial whip, which is made up of ADA transactions and fiat. So as we move into next year, we're looking at so if we create the budget and we disconnect the budget ask from a committee, so we have a pot. Now we know each committee is run via maybe ADA requests and fiat. By separating them, the ask of 100,000 or 10,000 from a committee is irrelevant to the number of ADA. It depends on the price. So absolutely, if we, making this up, if we withdraw 300 million and through the year we only spend 150, then there will be left 150, which will then carry into the following year. So that's not for the committees just to go and spend. It is, do we return it per se? Well, it's there for the betterment of the community, and it always will be there for the betterment of the community. So as we move into the following year, if there's any money left over, one could assume that we ask for less the next year, and so on and so forth. Does that answer your 3 points?
Yes. With the first two, I'm very satisfied. Thank you for your answer. With the third one, I'm not sure about what happens with the funds that are left.
Well, I guess it's because it's the community funding. It's not for Intersect to decide if there's anything left. It would always be down to maybe a committee could request more money, and that will go back to the CC and DReps for approval. So you may choose to spend more in that year or less. That will be a decision that we would take collectively.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Can we move on to the next one? Conscious of time. I mean, I can stay for a bit longer.
Yes, we have Tan now. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Hi. Sorry. Yeah. So I have 3 questions. The first question is that if the fund that is held by CDF is stolen, who's going to be responsible for that, and what is the recost for that? Because it's going to be held in the multi-sig wallet, right? And as of now, we don't know who are actually holding the signatures, the key for the wallet. That's the first one. Second question would be can we clarify on the approval matrix for the budgets on what are the DReps voting on, what issues are decided by DReps, what issues are decided by the committee, what issues are decided by Intersect, voted by the Intersect members. Because right now, as I understand, is that once the budget is approved by DReps, that's it. The DReps has no more decision-making power. It's all decided, within Intersect or by the budget committee. Yes, and the third question will be just how Lloyd mentioned that, if he's looking for people to work with him on the budget process. I reached out about 12 hours ago, but I have not received any reply yet. How can I, work with you to contribute to the budget process?
Okay, thank you. So first one is what happens if the CDF is stolen. So the CDF is a Cayman's entity, and as it stands at the moment, there are only 2 signatories that can sign contracts for that. One is a director located in Caymans, and then the other is a person within Intersect who is the administrator. So there's only 2 signatories at this moment in time. As far as the actual wallet itself, so we are moving into a custodian environment through a company called Zodia. I think Catalyst have moved on to it, so we're utilizing that system. Now, that as a company has got a level of insurance, and Intersect, as the administrator for the CDF, has a level of insurance as well over that. So there is some insurance that will cover it. Will it cover the total amount, from day one? Maybe not, but it will cover a level of errors and omissions through the work that Intersect and its members perform. So there is some insurance there. Now, moving on to the matrix, and I'll keep with the Zodia, if I may. So Zodia is a custodian. Now, we are looking at multiple custodians, so which is in discussions with Copper and Bit. I think it's BitGo as well as Zodia. So there's, potentially there are business continuity plans afoot at the moment to de-risk that just using one element. But the beauty of the Zodia is we can have ADA stored in it and have a inbuilt reviewer and approver. So an approver does not have access to everything, and a reviewer does. An eraser doesn't either. So it's that eraser checker process. So we can actually inbuild an approval process into the system, whereby I'll use this as a pure example. A committee may raise a request to pay something in ADA, for example, and it will go through an appropriate approval process, multiple individuals before actually being paid. So that does enable us to put a compliant process in place through Zodia. Getting involved, we'd have the Discord channels which are open for the budget, and yes, Lloyd and I can happily help. I know Lloyd can probably add more as far as getting involved, but the more people we have to review and discuss about the process, the happier we are. So, Lloyd, did you want to jump on how to get involved? I know that's something you've been quite heavily on.
Absolutely. So just very quickly, so Tom, we have about a 12-hour statement of work, basically, that we will try to answer every response within 12 hours. So I have a team that checks in the morning our time and in the evening our time, and we do respond to everything as fast as we can. So if it's been a couple of hours, I'm sorry I haven't gotten to it yet, but we will get to it. In fact, I came to this call as my first thing of the morning this morning, so I haven't had a chance to get into Discord and all that yet this morning. But yes, if you have made a request, so one of the things that we are doing right now, working groups are coming up. We were asked by the committee to put some guardrails around what the working groups can do, can't do, what they, how they should process. And so we're developing that right now, giving that back to the committee, and then the committee has to approve these working groups that we would be putting forward. And then as soon as those are available, we'll be looking for volunteers. You've raised your hand. Florian Valeri raised his hand. So, and there are others too, but everyone's raised their hand. We're going to be like, please join us in these working groups, because there's a lot to do, and we're going to need help to getting the work accomplished. So definitely appreciate your interest there, and we will be in touch to have you join in the working groups.
Before we move on to the next
Sorry, can
person,
I just follow up the last question?
1 second, Tan. 1 second, Tan.
Okay.
1 minute. Promise you I'll be very, very quick. We have a couple of more hands raised, including Tan, that he's going to follow up his question. We have 5 people besides Tan. And after these 5 have had their question answered, we are going to shut down the meeting and then move on to the next session, because we have a ton of people asking questions in the chat that we would like to answer as well. In the next session, we are saving the chat. Now, please continue on, Tan.
Yeah, sorry. So just a quick one, for the approval matrix, will you publish that information on who, which are the layers approvers, and, who are the person actually approving?
100%. Absolutely. Our goal is to document all of that stuff and make it completely public on the Budget Committee's portal, the knowledge base of the Budget Committee, or if it belongs to another committee, it would be on that committee's page. So it's a both and. Us and any committee that it affects.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom. Felix, how are you?
First of all, thanks a lot for what you're doing here, right? Trying to move all the moving parts and pieces together, communicating across that. You're doing an awesome job. So thanks a lot for this stuff.
Truly appreciate that.
I mean, you said the amount of 300 to 500 million ADA as sustainable in this regard, right? So, okay, this is ideally, let's say, what the Treasury in your calculation could sustain. I think that makes sense if we say there would be nothing else funded beside the annual budget for 2024, right? As anything above your budget would mean it's not sustainable as the Treasury spending for 2025. By default, now anything else as the approved annual budget stays in direct conflict with the Constitution, which aims to promote this, right? So that effectively means besides the annual budget for 2025, the Treasury couldn't spend on anything else than actually because it wouldn't be sustainable.
And that's a very good point. So importantly, as of right now, everything that's thrown against the wall as a possibility is below that number. It is. That's literally everything that's been requested up to this point is well below the 500. We're not bumping up against the top cap. We don't want to. I said it. I forget which call I said it in recently, but I liken it to the military. You try to run everything at 80% efficiency. You don't ever try to run anything at 100 because you need some room above to be able to take care of things that you can't handle. That you can't think about beforehand, that just comes out of nowhere. So you try to run at 80%. And that's really where we want to be, is not being at 100% of what is possible. We want to stay below that so that there's room in case an emergency happens.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate Lloyd's points there is we know that there's a sustainability of around the 300 to 500. I think within those numbers we need to agree the total withdrawal for the year with the DReps, and then with that information we can then proportion the percentage that is available to DReps to approve on outside of the Cardano budget and the volume then that is within the Cardano budget, and then that's the elements that would be then overseen and managed by the committees. So I see lots more conversations I think to be had around that with the DReps. Mike?
It's my turn. Hello.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Yes, go ahead.
Only if you brought me maple sugar. Only if you brought me a little maple sugar.
I didn't have my daily dose. Okay. So my question is pretty simple, I think. In the event that the budget info action requiring over 50% from DReps does not pass as anticipated, or if it does pass, in the event that if the Treasury withdrawal action failed to meet the 67% DRep threshold, what contingency plan do you have in place to address these scenarios?
So you've asked me the question that makes me wake up sweating in the middle of the night. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
So at the moment, obviously those are aware the Intersect and the CDF was seed funded by IOG and Emergo. So we have some funds that we are still administrating on behalf of the community in the CDF for 2024. Now we set our 2024 budget lower than obviously the cash position that we have in the CDF. So we have some funds that can take us into next year. So we plan to continue into next year with our core infrastructure elements of the work. So we have some contracts which we will have to sign and we'll have to caveat. So our plan A is very much to keep on track with the Treasury withdrawal in January, and whilst Intersect covers the cost of any of contracts that are signed pre-Christmas that are delivering in 2025. But we only have so much left in that CDF. But our plan is to spend every penny as per our mandate. Now, if the action is a no, then yes, we would have to come back and meetings would be needed and discussions with the DReps to understand what it is and what would need to change. Now, hopefully, through the work that Lloyd and I are starting now, so November, December going in, we have more sessions like this, answer burning questions, get into the detail and understand what is required to get us to a position of a yes. Obviously, we can include that through conversations. If it's a no, then we will go back and discuss again, and hopefully then re-raise a question. That we'd have to do that. So we'd have to go through a cycle again. Financially, it does get to a breaking point, and yes, there are again additional conversations at that breaking point if it does continue, be it bridging loans, be it alternatives to maintain, the CDF entity, which obviously maintains the chain. So we are looking at options and speaking to the seed funders, via the board, which has got the IOG and Emergo on as to what options could be available to us should we not be able to agree with the CC and DReps on any withdrawal into 2025. Answer your question, Mike.
Yeah, that was it. That was more towards the budget itself, and maybe just a constructive comment at the end. What's going on right here? I think that's the right way to do it, and you should probably do much more of those meetings in the future. That was it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly the purpose of November, socialization. So more of these noted and more sociable for global individuals as well. So we are looking at doing weekends and appropriate time zones as well, just to add.
Yep. Are there any office hours sessions set up at the moment, Lawrence, just to cover? Because I think there are office hours sessions, aren't there?
Yes.
Lloyd, I think there are, yes.
These are taking the place. These and the DRep weekly sessions are what the current office hour sessions are. So these are widely publicized for anyone to join, and then the DRep sessions that we have at Intersect that are scheduled once a week are our 2 office hour sessions that we have right now.
Jenny?
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes. Loud and clear.
Hey, good morning. Yes, good. I guess I'll piggyback on that. I mean, I have 1,000 questions, but, I will never have them all answered. So I'll be here tomorrow again or in the next call with piggybacking on what you said, Lloyd. Every Wednesdays, there is a call that you can join as well and ask more questions. I mean, the only person that I've seen from the committee show up every week is Lloyd, but I don't know if Lloyd is supposed to be there every week. Yeah. So far, he's been there. So you can ask questions just like you did here today, which is pretty cool. And that's a weekly one. So definitely participate. Instead of asking questions, I'm just going to address something regarding communication because of what happened here today and also because of what I have mentioned before regarding this and other calls that we've had. I took my time to write it down, so I don't take much time. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak. This is a very important issue regarding communication and perception around the budget process. When information hasn't been fully shared or clearly explained, we sometimes hear questions as assumptions or referred as misconceptions. But I believe it is essential to distinguish between actual misconceptions and information gaps. Misconceptions occur when people misunderstand information that has been provided clearly. But when details are lacking, people are often left with filling the blanks. And this is a misunderstanding on their part. It's a response to an information void. And there's a natural response for us to do this, right? In the absence of clear information, people naturally draw on their experiences, expectations, and even subconscious biases to make sense of what is unclear. Psychologically, this can lead to people to form conclusions based on limited information, which might not align with reality. When labeled these responses as misconceptions, it can feel like a subtle form of gaslighting, placing responsibility on the community for an issue that originates from lack of clarity and transparency on the other end. So people might feel their genuine need for clarity is being dismissed as they are at fault for not understanding fully. This can lead to a sense of distrust and frustration, which does not foster the open and collaborative environment we aim for. So moving forward, I suggest we focus on identifying and filling any information gaps proactively. By doing so, we can help reduce the need for assumptions and prevent the unintentional biases that can arise from people when they're left in the dark. And I believe this approach will help us build trust, support, and everyone's understanding. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, noted and agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal is to educate as much, as far, and as widely as we can, and we will continue to do so. So thank you for pointing out the gaps, and we'll do our best to fill them.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. The dog is here.
Hey, guys.
Had to tap him on the nose with newspaper this weekend.
That's fine. Hey, this meeting would not have the same level of attendance had it not been for that.
Give me some credit.
I hear you, man. You get the credit. You do get the credit. You also, that was a long weekend for me. That was a long weekend. It was a lot of work.
So can we use the word misconception basket?
Yeah, I do want to preface this by saying, Lloyd, Lawrence, thank you guys for all the work you guys have put in. I know this isn't easy, and you're presenting to the entire Cardano community, which we are known to be drama queens. So with that said, I don't know if this might be the right place to answer, but given that it would have taken about $3,000 to potentially manipulate the last Intersect election based on the number of votes. So how does Intersect plan to address the lack of civil resistance in its quote unquote governance structure to prevent the manipulation? Because we're talking about 500 million ADA, right? And it would be very easy for me to go spend $10,000, $20,000, have all my friends and family or just the Hosky Discord sign up to be Intersect members, and then just say, hey, let's take that 500 million, let's take 10 million of that and give it to Hosky, and we're going to go rain it on our Discord. So I think that's my biggest concern right now. There's a lot of other concerns about the budget, where it's coming from, who had input, why are we funding this or that? Not something that I think we need to be looking at. I think something that we need to be looking at now is it's too easy to game the Intersect system right now to where it would be easy to manipulate. So I think until we have a little more civil resistance, it seems silly to hand Intersect 500 million ADA for them to distribute at will.
Okay. Noted. So the first one about the voting. So agreed. I think we did talk about this. It is obviously for this year, the first voting, we went on a trust basis, and we have monitored this. Moving forward, and we're just in discussions at the moment with the members around how do we ensure that, it's, we move into a more sociable element, and it's not just, as you say, the ability for one region and or a person, to pay individuals to join and then vote on their behalf. So we are looking at that, yes. Now we have to have a level of trust, and I think I'm quite pleased with the analysis that the team did show that, individual members, did vote for their appropriate person. But let's not, be under an illusion that the region with the biggest individuals, the most number of members was the most successful. And maybe that's the right way of doing it. But it'll be a members' debate and discussion to go forward. Really, the funding, obviously, it's not coming to Intersect. It is going to the CDF, and that is we are the administrators of the fund. So I think there is, again, additional conversations to have around, the members that we have on the boards and the committees. One would hope that they are the most appropriate for that committee. And then maybe that's a conversation we need to have with the DReps at the point of reviewing this information and go through in a bit more detail. Are they comfortable with the experts that have been voted in and are running these workshops, be they the product, be they the technical steering committee, etc. And it sounds like additional information we can bring to our conversation.
Right. So again, that to me, and one thing that I don't like, just to follow up on what you said, is you guys keep mentioning the CDF and then Intersect and trying to quote unquote differentiate. But as it stands, I don't think there's enough info. I think a lot of us for the first time heard about the CDF just with the meeting in Dubai or whatever not. So we don't have really enough information on that. So it feels slightly dishonest to try to make them seem as separate entities when I believe most of us, they seem like it's all interchangeable, whether you call it Intersect, whether you call it CDF, it all seems to be very much the same. So in that case, I think that's something that maybe needs to be addressed further. More information needs to be put out about who's the CDF, how will they reach, decisions on where the money goes. There was also discussion about, let's open up the books for private companies. As much as I would love to see that, I don't think that's the right approach. But if somebody is seeking funding, from say that the 500 million do get approved, we better have specific details on how those funds are going to be spent. I'll just use IO as an example, right? Because they're one of the companies that likely will come for funds. IO say, okay, guys, we want $100 million to give to us for us to continue to develop without any proper milestones, deliverables. You bet your ass we're going to hold their feet to the fire this time if they're not delivering on a timely manner, because now you're touching our treasury funds. And this goes for anybody, not specific. I use IO as an example, but this is for anybody that's requiring any sort of funding. So yeah, I think we just need to, give more information to the community, put more information out where it's publicly available. Again, digging through Discord is never the most beneficial thing for anybody to do. So we need a more centralized location to get all the information. So yeah, that's kind of just my feedback, some of the concerns that I have. And of course, I plan to participate in every single one of these. I hope every DRep does so as well, because they are very important, and this is where we can voice our opinion and, any concerns that we have. So thank you.
Agreed. And I've got the action, and I will write an update and post it to everybody so they know what a CDF is. Absolutely.
Yeah, very fair. And actually, you should, Husky, encourage all of your members to join Intersect. That would actually be really awesome. Please do. Don't try to raid the Treasury. Bad dog.
Well, to be fair, the awards just happened, and we had over 400 votes, more than any other category. So we could have technically rigged the election. Now, personally, I did not do that because I don't want to damage the legitimacy of Intersect this early. But if shenanigans start happening, I have a very active community, and we will gladly vote as we deem necessary to keep Cardano protected.
Husky is a
no
good
Treasury
dog.
rate for Husky.
Good dog, Husky. Good dog. Thank you.
Before we move on, first, thank you, Husky, and hi. For those who saw, Mauro raised his hand, and he was already in the list. Unfortunately, he dropped out accidentally, so he's back online to have his question answered. Next one is Marlon. Marlon, go ahead, please. Ask your question.
Yeah, I've been dropping in and out. How's it going, guys?
Good to see you, Marlon.
Yeah, there's some points that
were
were
volunteers here that wants to join on one of the committees. So good to see you here. We're glad you're here, and that there's another person with financial experience. So what you got for us today, Marlon?
Well, I do like the fact that was brought up, like the disjointedness of the communication, and like on Discord and the meetings, you'll have a subcommittee that will have their own meeting, and then you'll have the main page that has a meeting. And where do you go for all the information? What I put in chat was like, hey, we're having these conversations, right? Let's throw it on a web page or something. Everyone's concerns, right? And then what we're doing to address it in the outline, because we're hearing some really good things right now that I think are appeasing the people, right? Especially myself. Like, okay, this is what we're doing, because you have. And I think across the community I'm hearing the same concerns, the same thing. Where do I go for this? Even myself, like, where do I find this? And it's like, oh, there's a meeting here. Where was that? Oh, it's in this Discord thing separately from everything else you have to hunt down. Right. But besides that, going back to the Treasury thing, are we looking at it 3 million ADA at 32 cents? Or are we looking at it like, oh, tomorrow it might be $5? Right? We have to look at it right now. Like, realistically, we have to convert that to USDT, and we have to get funding right now. We don't know what the future holds. So what if the opposite happens, right? And it goes down to 15 cents. I don't want that to happen, right? Then now you're in a deficit for the budget. So it's like getting these things on paper and, giving both sides of the story and why. Maybe we have a contingency within the budget just in case something happens, right? And then going back to the voting, when I looked at it, as far as the people being voted in, there are some individuals that did not put or fill in the conflict of interest, and then there's certain areas you had 52 individuals voting where, you see, for some people that just say, I like cake. And they were still on there and still got voted in. And I'm like, yeah, it's based on trust, and they still got votes now. I'm saying they still got votes. So if we're doing this as a nonprofit corp, we're doing this for the benefit of the community, how does that help? When you have someone that's not presenting their experience on paper or anything else, even given the opportunity to go on there, is that just trolling? Like, how does that work? Yeah. I don't know. It's not my place. I'm just pointing it out. And then you have certain individuals that I've noticed that are sitting on multiple various committees at the same time. Like, from what I've seen so far, Intersect is a lot of work. So how can they actually give it their all when you're sitting on 2-3 different committees at the same time and maybe also be on the board. Just saying. And then we're talking about the Constitution. Okay, what about the bylaws? How are we living up and in compliance with the bylaws, right? Because from what I read, certain changes are supposed to be approved up to the board and everything else, how we're doing that. From what I saw, the budget committee is just there to accept. It just says, hey, we take what you give us and we send it forward. It doesn't say anything about you review, you analyze, or anything else. It just says we take and move forward. But what you're describing, Lloyd, is a lot more than what's in there described in the bylaws.
When you say bylaws, just so I'm clear, is it the bylaws or the budget process you're referring to?
Now, the overall, when I looked at somewhere when it says for each committee, the bylaws, and it described what each committee's responsibilities are, and I can pull that up, and I could be mistaken also. It just says the budget committee is responsible for just, I believe it's Intersect bylaws. You just receive the information and it goes up. So I don't know how that plays out with everything else. Yeah. It just says, hey, you just receive it. And so what you're describing right now is a lot more than what I read, right? So how does that fit with that, with everything else going on? And are we actually, doing things as we're supposed to based on what's written? And we're talking about the Constitution, but do we actually need to make changes to the bylaws because we're going by the Constitution now? Things like that is what I'm looking at, because if we're talking about the validity of Intersect, all of these things matter in totality, right? The framework has to be good.
Yeah, so the bylaws obviously were written last year, and I do believe they noted absolutely that there was a budget committee, but not the detail behind it. And then there was the governance document, a membership governance document, which we put more details in. And then consequently, there's the terms of reference, which outlines more specifics. So it has evolved as we've moved forward. I will acknowledge that we have noted that the bylaws that were written last year has evolved, and obviously as the constitutions become more visible to us and understood, there are some points where we now have to go back and update our bylaws, but that will be a member's approval to change the bylaws. The membership governance document is more within our bounds as a members-based organisation to change, and that's approved by the board itself. So it's easier for us to change our governance document, rather than our bylaws. The bylaws are the ones that we have posted, Wyoming. So yes, the bylaws are deliberately very shallow, enabling us to have a controlling document managed by the board and thus the members. So they are deliberately. And yes, we acknowledge that they need to be updated for this year with the Constitution coming in. And I'm working with the lawyers right now to do that update. Once the Constitution is approved in the December board will be proposing a change to the bylaws to the board, and then consequently a vote probably will have to be taken by the members. So we'll hope to align them up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And then when I look at it, how does the community feel? I don't know if they're looking at it as far as, we're voting these people in for the benefit of Intersect and Cardano as a whole. Realistically, can someone effectively manage 3 different seats?
So again, one thing we talked about that, and I'm again really pleased that the likes of Adam and Kavinda, for example, joining the board. They also got voted in to other seats, and they have announced that they're stepping down. So they only hold 1 seat, and even their constitutional seats that they both held, they've also stepped down for. So they've taken the board seat and stepped down from others. And now, again, I think there was there's one in particular. So even when we see a chair, and this is the Intersect Steering Committee as an example. If an individual that's been voted on the IC is also a chair, the ISC members have agreed that they would also step down from the IC, enabling the next voted on person to join. So engaging more involvement. So that is something that has happened, yeah. So you don't hold multiple seats in voting.
Yeah, and then what was mentioned before was, as far as the conflict of interest, as far as that trust being a nonprofit corp and everything else, and just for transparency for the community, something like that should be at least in my opinion, hey, you should disclose if you have a conflict of interest. We have set standards. you're not included on any vote, and you're taken out. I don't know if that's there. I haven't seen it. I'm just, I haven't seen it. But like when I look at something, I go back to what's written and see how the flow goes, right? That's what I do.
Agreed. And I'm taking an action from here is just to revisit with the secretaries and the chairs to make sure they are asking that conflict of interest up front so it's clear. I know I do it on the board, cameras on, checking, and I did it on the budget committee on Monday with the new individual coming on, conflict of interest, we're making sure that people are aware of, the budget committee does and will talk about confidential elements and topics, but we are Charter House rules, and you are allowed to go and post, but there's specific rules and regulations. So that was revisited in the budget meeting.
Yeah,
but I have the action.
Yeah, because there's some individuals on the budget committee and on like the civics or MCC also, right? Like, and it's like, how can you be approving or, reviewing your own stuff, right? Which is fine, not fine, but it's like, I don't see where you have the risk mitigating factors where it's like, okay, this is our Intersect document that if you're on this committee, you're excluded from these votes, right? Not just saying, hey, do you have a conflict of interest?
Okay. Noted. I'll take it away. I do keep a list of them personally, as I'm the secretary for 2, budget and board, and the chair for the ISC, but I do keep that record in our internal systems. We don't make those published. Maybe we should. I have an action and I will take it to the committees.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlon. Now let's go over to Moto, and he will be the last question answered before we wrap up the call. 1 second, everyone. Remember, the chat is being saved in real time, and we will filter through the questions that have been asked and compare it to the questions that have already been asked while live on microphone. Filter them out, and we will answer them hopefully in the next few sessions. So please make sure to drop your question in the chat if you do have one. Moto, go ahead.
Perfect, Lara. First things first, I didn't jump by mistake. I have another meeting with Mercy about the Constitutional Convention, working on that. Just to mention that it's important, I read in the thread that at the end of the day, the Constitutional Council will do a double check, but at the same time doesn't have the authority to make a value judgments about the budget. And at the same time, there is no faculties recognizes. So I was just mentioning in this meeting that the only barrier the community has here is the DReps, because myself as an ICC member, if I need to vote about this, I need to say it's constitutional, because the only thing that the Constitution say, it must be a budget. There is no budget process recognized in the Constitution. So please, as a community member and part of the CC, push harder on this to have a budget process recognized in the Constitution, or recognize rights or faculties to have another kind of decision. How it's right now is in your power, the community itself. The CC only can say approve if the DReps vote yes. So the barrier here, at least as I see it, is the DReps. Another question that I have, Lloyd mentioned January, but my concerns is that the ICC and the chain, the ICC only needs to ratify the Constitution on the chain that was voted for. So you need a re-election or election before that. So given that you need election for the CC doing the chain and have the Constitution and chain, do you see January is feasible? I think more March, April. I see practically impossible to have this by in January.
Yes, Mauro. Look, it is what it is. Some of these processes can go simultaneously, some cannot. You're right. Like we are grappling with this every day. That's why we give like timelines that are if everything goes exactly according, marches on, and we all agree somehow it'll happen this way. But is March more likely? Yeah, it is. You're right. That doesn't mean that we don't try to make sure we're making the moves in January if we can. We do have to move our process forward. All of us do. This is us taking our training wheels off and beginning to ride our bike together. And so, as soon as we can, we will. But yeah, you're right. It could be as late as March, and that causes other concerns. So those are all the things that as I said, those are the things that wake me up in the middle of the night. These are what I currently have nightmares about, is all these things taking too long and going over, and we're not communicating it well enough, or whatever it is that causes this to be further and further delayed, because this is what we're dealing with right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's so. Sorry, just to add, there's so many moving parts that we know. We've got a plan where we're trying to. The budget committee is created, and obviously that all has to change if the CC and other things don't go to plan. But yes, we are monitoring as close as we can, and there is a utopian plan, and there's plan B, C, and D.
Okay, because there is so really needed steps before. So the ICC only needs to approve the constitution. You need a new CC to have this on chain, this budget, and at the same time saying this to the delegates, saying this to the people out there that are going to attend to the convention. I read on Twitter that the CC must vote unconstitutional, but given that there is not a process and we don't have faculties or right as a CC members or the eventually voted ones to do this, it's up to you and the DReps to decide this. So please, or include it in the constitution, or give all the decision by the DReps. But I must say that how it's right now, there is no argument to say unconstitutional. At the same time, I like it or not, whatever, there is no arguments I can say if I base 100% on the Constitution, this is unconstitutional. This is something that all of us have in mind, because I received DMs about this, and it's out of my power.
Good point. Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, we are now going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Once again, reminder that we did save the chat, and we are going to filter through every question that was asked, both in chat and both live. The questions that have already been answered, we'll hopefully move forward from them. We'll move away from them in the next session and answer new questions from new people and the ones that have not been answered in this first session. Thank you all for coming and taking a little bit of your time. I mean, not a little bit, almost 2 hours. We're very close to nearing 2 hours of session. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Chris, and every single representative of the budget committee that has been here, and everyone who asked questions. We will see you in the next session, which is when, Lloyd? Thursday. Okay, perfect. Let me actually grab the Luma link for everyone and send it here on chat so you guys are able to register for the next one in case you wish to attend.
Yep. Lu.ma/Cardano Budget Process, all lowercase.
Perfect.
Why have I memorized that? Because I've typed it so many times in the last couple of days.
Hey, apologies, Laura and Lloyd. It's Rafael here. Just a quick question regarding the recording of this session. Where should be available?
I will. It looks like it's going to my Otter, which means I can export the audio file, and I will make it available from the Budget Committee website.
Sounds great, Lloyd. Thank you very much.
Base. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are now going to cease the recording. I think you have to do it, Lloyd, most likely. Oh, no, there you go. 1 second. We just ceased the meeting, and then we'll stop recording. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your day for those who are here closer to us and those in Asia and other countries. See you tomorrow. See you in the room.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you for the session. Bye-bye. Take care.